good, but it can be better. And why shouldn't it be? All you need is to want it. Think about finally having everything you always wanted.
I can save today, but you can save the world. Steve. Diane.
Now, I take what I want in return.
Everyone must see. You.
You know what you need to do.
Aloha! This is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man, coming to you live once again from beautiful Hawaii here on the island of Oahu, bringing you, yes you, the best movie reviews on the entire island of Oahu. And yes, this is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man. And last night, Friday night, Christmas, I went ahead and I finally saw that Gal Gadot movie, Wonder Woman 1984. And, well, remember our rating scale. Shaka Thumbs Up. It's good to see. I recommend it. Shaka Thumbs Down. It's bad to see. It's junk. I don't recommend it. And for Wonder Woman 1984, starring Gal Gadot and Chris Pine, who returns as Steve Trevor from the first movie, it is overall a Shaka Thumbs Up. Now I had to think about that, and I was wrestling with it because of several things. Now I will say that this is a Shaka Thumbs Up, but it is not as strong as it was for the very first Wonder Woman #1. Which took place during World War I. This one, as the title suggests, takes place in 1984. We see that Diana Prince has a new career as what we kind of caught a glimpse of in Justice League, that she works as a art a cultural anthropologist, art expert, kind of, sort of, over at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. It is likely that during Justice League, perhaps she still worked there, but was just on loan or working overseas in Paris, where we had seen her in Justice League. Now, what can I say about this? As you may know, this was supposed to come out, gosh, like almost 2 years ago. Almost a situation like New Mutants. Essentially what took place was Warner Brothers had to do some reshoots, some reworkings of the ending, I believe. And then they had a question about when it should come out. And so they had originally put this at 2020, or finally had decided for the summer of 2020, and then COVID took place, so then it was again delayed, till come out this December, which they decided to put on HBO Max and also do a limited theater release. Limited because of the COVID, as far as what theaters are still open. So that's about all I can say about that. I have to say this was a big mistake and a big misstep for Warner Brothers, who should have put this movie in theaters last year in 2019. Because whatever additional work they did on this, it didn't seem to really pay off, I don't think. The storyline is a weak storyline. Patty Jenkins returns as the director from part 1. She had much more freedom in this one. However, The story is based on Jeff Johns, a writer at DC. And I don't like his writing, honestly. He's done a poor job for most of his DC characters. And it really shows in this. To put Maxwell Lord, if that name should sound familiar to the non-comic book fans, it is because that just happened to be 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Supergirl's main villain on her show when it debuted on CBS. Maxwell Lord was the villain, turning into a host of villains later on, then Lena Luthor, then Lex Luthor, because once again the Berlanti CW DC universe was uprooted because they wanted to use some of their ideas, the television ideas, for the movies, which again destroys a lot of the show's, the TV show's potential. Just basically robbing from Peter to pay Paul, essentially. Plus, in the comics, Maxwell Lord's not really well known. He did have a stint where he fought the Justice League, but he's not like a very well-known villain like Batman's Joker, Superman's Lex Luthor, or even, Cheetah is also in this movie, played by Kristen Wiig, and she does an alright job as Cheetah. As her other character, before she gets her powers, it's laughable, and the writing in that shows. She might as well be Selena Kyle, Catwoman, from the Batman Returns movie, from what we see. Or even that awful Catwoman movie that came out with what's her name? Oh gosh, I can't even remember her name. That's how bad that movie was. And she won an Oscar. All right, but about this movie, it is set in 1984. It opens up with a flashback scene of young little girl Diana Prince trying to win like some decathlon for to prove her skills, I guess, to the rest of the Amazons. And she almost wins, except that she basically takes a shortcut. And so this whole 10-minute, 15-minute opening sequel is not only, it is a feast for the eyes and something to kind of try to remind you of who Wonder Woman was, where she came from. But essentially, it just tells you the moral that this story, this whole movie is going to follow, is like, be true to yourself and essentially don't take any shortcuts. There are no shortcuts in life. As we flash forward to 1984, we see Wonder Woman working out of Washington, D.C., trying to keep a low profile, destroying cameras as she saves people from robberies, traffic incidents, etc. Now, why, but plenty of people do see her and could describe her, and so when Batman versus Superman comes around, it doesn't quite click. Why wouldn't Batman have known about her? Why wouldn't the world have known about who Wonder Woman was? Why did Lex have to go to such lengths just to get this picture from World War I, which Batman gets that file? It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't click within the other DC universe. Also, set in the 80s, it's very tongue-in-cheek, very campy, in fact. Think Aquaman in that respect. It's as if Warner Brothers Studio had said, hey, Aquaman was silly and fun and full of nonsense and colorful, so let's make Wonder Woman 1984 that way. And you know, after the darker tones of World War I and the continued darker tones of Batman versus Superman into Justice League, whether it be Whedon's or Snyder's interpretation, this is laughable, and it sets up, it breaks why she disappeared from the world for so long until Batman versus Superman. So basically it just destroys the continuum from that. I have seen online some people have said that, or mentioned that Wonder Woman 1984 probably should have came out after, maybe it should have been like 2012 or 20, whenever Batman versus Superman came out, it should have been right after that, you know, before Justice League, but after Batman versus Superman. That would have been more continuum, and it still would have worked, it still would have made sense. It just wouldn't have been as campy and silly as said in the 1980s. And also other TV shows have done this better, other movies have done the 80s much better. Stranger Things come to mind, especially with that battle in the Starcourt Mall for Stranger Things. Even It, Chapter 2 was set in the 80s, and they did a much better job, you know, or It Chapter 1 did a much better job setting the tone of the 80s as well. So it's a weakness on that as well. Additionally, this is super long. It's like 2.5 hours long. And again, they could have chopped off at least a half an hour of this movie and it would have been played a lot better. Essentially, cut out that first whole 15 minutes of the flashback on Themyscira and play that a little bit, clips here and there, during flashbacks throughout the movie. And that would have freed up a lot of time. The whole third act, almost the end of the film, could be chopped off with the defeat of Maxwell Lord and Wonder Woman's victory, because it's not really much of a defeat, and that's been another mention that people have been dissatisfied with. There's no ultimate fight scene between Maxwell Lord and Wonder Woman, unlike what had taken place in the comics, which would have made more sense in this one. Yes, it does kind of, you know, Patty Jenkins maybe wanted to push the envelope and call for a forgiveness, kind of loving, nurturing kind of power that Wonder Woman has. But that's not the way it went down in the comics. In the comics, Wonder Woman killed Maxwell Lord. And I think that should have been, you know, where this would have taken place. And maybe from that dark spot and that dark stain is why Wonder Woman disappeared. Having killed somebody, killed a mortal, maybe that's what drove her from the public eye and helping people until Batman versus Superman. So again, just some weaknesses in the plot, but overall, by the second act and most of the third act, it does eventually get to a Shaka Thumbs Up. But the whole first act, you have to wait an hour into the movie until Steve Trevor shows up, and which at that time things finally begin to click. Again, Kristen Wiig, before she gets her powers, is laughable, and she is made to be the joke in this movie, but still, having seen Marvel do it so much better with their villains, it's just ridiculous that, you know, DC couldn't do something more serious. Kristen Wiig is supposed to play this scientist, this very knowledgeable person, but again, like I say, she's like Selena Kyle, Catwoman, ironically, which she becomes the Cheetah. She's basically that goofball character before she gets her powers, which totally takes you away, and you really don't care what happens to her eventually anyways because of that. Steve Trevor coming in, Chris Pine, is a wonderful addition, and basically he saves this movie with the tenderness. Those wondering if any thing had happened with Diana Prince and Steve Trevor from the first movie. It looks like it did, because they wait and well, which they don't wait, they don't hesitate to jump into bed once he returns. So that also helps the plot. But of course, unfortunately, you don't see anything or anything implied. Just again, kind of like those old TV shows from the 50s, you know, it's nighttime and then it's morning time and they wake up in bed and everybody's fully clothed, but you know, they were doing something. So that's pretty much it. Those, you know, you've seen from the plot, Maxwell Lord basically gets this stone that gives him the ability to, well, the stone that grants wishes, essentially. And so that's the main thing, which, where have we seen this before? The same plot before. And again, that stone looks very Kryptonian. Think Superman 1 and 2 with those crystals, and that's where you would see that type of crystalline stone to give wishes. Now, they don't make any references to Superman, to the Kryptonians in this, but again, just by the looks of it, it looks very Kryptonite-ish, that stone. It's a different color, it could be a different amber kryptonite or something. We don't know, and they don't follow up on that at all in this movie. But again, this plot, other than what I've described, take this plot, just save your money if you're going to spend money on it, and go watch Supergirl, the 80s movie, Supergirl. That's the same thing. The stone comes to Earth. A villain on Earth finds the stone. It grants her wishes and great power, and she decides to take over the planet. And Supergirl must stop her. Maxwell Lord gets this stone, possibly from Krypton. We don't know, but it sure looks like it. It starts granting him his wishes. He starts to take over the world. There you go. And Supergirl, Wonder Woman, must defeat them and retrieve the stone, or stop them from using the stone. So that's essentially it. Again, just stuff you've already seen, stuff that causes it not to make sense, plus a overstuffed runtime is why it's, you know, it's hard to give it a Shaka thumbs up. But again, Chris Pine and the chemistry with Gal Gadot is what saves this movie. It's not the villains, it's not Maxwell Lord, Pedro Pascal, or Kristen Wiig's Cheetah. It's definitely not the story, but it is the chemistry between those two actors, you know, and their relationship. That is the only reason you might want to care about this movie, and ultimately, because of that, I give it a Shaka thumbs up, just barely. But I wouldn't pay for this in the theater. If you already have HBO Max, you might want to go ahead and watch it. But I wouldn't subscribe to HBO Max just to get this movie. All right, thank you so much. This is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man. Again, a squeaking out of a Shaka thumbs up for Wonder Woman 1984. They say they're going to do a Wonder Woman 3, but if this thing had gone to the box office, I don't think it would have been making the $1 billion Warner Brothers would have hoped. And now with the COVID, it certainly won't. All right, thank you so much. It's Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man, saying mahalo and aloha.